Today we are ranking these weapons by one brutal standard, the gap between their reputation and their reality. The ones that were worshipped but quietly failed soldiers. The ones nobody talked about that silently won the war. What we're doing today is not what most ranking videos do. We are not measuring specs. We are not counting kills. Some of what you're about to hear is going to contradict what you learned in school. Good. That means we're getting somewhere. Let's start from the bottom. Weapon number 1, the M1 Garand, the most overpraised rifle in American history. Let's start with the sacred cow. The M1 Garand. General Patton called it, and I'm quoting directly, the greatest battle implement ever devised. Military historians love it. Video game designers put it in every World War II game. It's practically American mythology at this point. And in terms of pure mechanical engineering, they're not wrong. The Garand was the first standard-issue semi-automatic rifle any nation issued to its regular infantry. That is genuinely remarkable. While German soldiers were manually cycling a bolt after every single shot, the American GI pulled the trigger 8 times, 8 rounds before a reload. That rate of fire changed ambushes, it changed skirmishes, it saved lives. But here is what nobody puts in the brochure. The Garand weighed nearly 10 pounds, loaded. Now carry that 10 pounds through the mud of Belgium, through the volcanic ash of Iwo Jima, through 22 miles of Italian mountain trail. Soldiers in the Pacific hated how it rusted in humidity. Soldiers in North Africa had sand jam its gas mechanism. And the famous Garand ping, that metallic sound the en-bloc clip made when it ejected after the last round. Soldiers were terrified it gave away their position. The army insisted this was a myth. The men in the foxholes had a different opinion. So where does the Garand land? It was genuinely lethal and genuinely overhyped. Best semi-automatic infantry rifle of the war? Probably. As flawless as the mythology suggests? Not even close. Weapon 2, the M1 Carbine, the weapon nobody wanted to need. Now here's a weapon that had an identity crisis for the entire war. The M1 Carbine was designed for one very specific purpose: give something lighter than a full rifle to soldiers who weren't frontline infantry. Medics, radio operators, officers, jeep drivers, men who needed 2 free hands more than they needed stopping power. In that role, it was perfect. Light, fast, easy to handle in tight spaces. And it fired a pistol caliber adjacent round that was still considerably more useful than a sidearm. Here's where it gets complicated. By mid-war, frontline troops started wanting the carbine because it was lighter. Not because it was better, because they were exhausted. A man who's been humping gear for 6 months will make trade-offs you'd never make from an armchair. The problem? In Korea, just 5 years later, the same carbine became a disaster. The underpowered round failed to stop heavily clothed North Korean soldiers in the winter. Soldiers who trusted it in Europe were suddenly finding it inadequate. What this tells us about World War II, the carbine was effective specifically because of where the war was fought and who was carrying it. Context made it a winner. Change the context and you'd exposed its limits. That's a more nuanced story than most rankings want to tell you. Weapon 3, the Thompson submachine gun, Hollywood's darling, the sergeant's headache. Before we talk about the Thompson in war, we have to talk about where it came from. Because the Thompson submachine gun arrived at World War II carrying baggage. Prohibition-era baggage. Al Capone baggage. It was the gangster gun, the Chicago typewriter. And when the Army adopted it, some officers viewed it with genuine suspicion. A weapon associated with criminals couldn't possibly be a proper military arm, could it? Set that nonsense aside. In close quarters, in the Pacific jungles, in the buildings of North Africa, the Thompson was ferocious. It fired the .45 ACP round. Slow bullet, enormous mass. What it lacked in range, it compensated for by hitting like a freight train. But here's the part that gets cut from the heroic version. The Thompson was heavy, heavier than the Garand. The drum magazines everybody associates with it, the Army hated them in the field. Too unreliable, too loud, too heavy. They switched to box magazines. The iconic look most people picture was mostly abandoned by the soldiers who actually used it, and the ammunition consumption was staggering. Fire that weapon for 10 seconds and you've burned through a magazine. Result? Brilliant in the right hands for the right distance. A logistics nightmare at scale, genuinely lethal, frequently cursed at. Weapon 4, the Browning M1919, the gun that never got a movie. I want to take a moment for a weapon that never made it into the mythology. No famous quote about it, no heroic nickname, no starring role in war films. The Browning M1919 medium machine gun. This is the weapon that turned tide of battle situations into controlled devastation. A belt-fed, air-cooled 30 caliber weapon that could fire sustained bursts where almost every other weapon overheated. German infantry feared it specifically because of its consistency. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't jam after 3 magazines. It didn't need a specialist to operate once you'd learned it. Here's the dirty truth about machine guns in World War II that most people don't realize. The famous dramatic weapons, the ones men remembered in memoirs, were often the ones they were close to. The machine guns were frequently the ones keeping them alive from 100 yards away, unseen, unsung. If the M1 Garand is the celebrity of American World War II weapons, the M1919 is the steadfast professional who made the whole production possible. Genuinely lethal, chronically underappreciated. Weapon 5, the M3 grease gun. The weapon soldiers mocked, then couldn't live without. By 1942, the Thompson was so expensive and time-consuming to manufacture that the Army needed an alternative. Their solution was not what anyone expected. They took a mechanic's grease gun, essentially stamped metal tubes welded together, and they said, "This will do." Officially, the M3 submachine gun. Unofficially, the grease gun. And soldiers who first received it laughed, literally laughed. It looked like something built in a high school shop class. The Sten gun, its British equivalent, had been nicknamed the plumber's nightmare. The M3 somehow looked worse. Then they used it. The rate of fire was deliberately slow compared to the Thompson, which actually made it more controllable in close combat. You could steer the burst. You could manage your ammunition. The 45 ACP round hit just as hard. The gun was half the price to produce. Soldiers could disassemble and clean it in total darkness. By the end of the war, tankers and vehicle crews who'd mocked it were desperately requesting more. It worked in mud. It worked in sand. It was almost impossible to break. The grease gun is the single best argument in this entire video for the difference between looking lethal and being lethal. The soldiers who laughed at it first eventually trusted it with their lives. Weapon 6, the bazooka, M1 the revolution that almost wasn't. In early 1942, the American Army had a problem. German panzer tanks were eating through Allied positions, and the standard anti-tank weapons that infantry carried were, to be direct about it, embarrassing. Then a colonel named Leslie Skinner watched a test of a new rocket launcher in a New Jersey field. What he saw changed infantry warfare. The bazooka. Here's the thing most people don't know about the bazooka. Its first combat deployment in North Africa in 1943 was nearly a catastrophe. The early M1 model had a backblast that could injure the operator's own team. The rockets were sensitive to moisture. And perhaps most critically, by the time it reached North Africa, the Germans had already captured some. Germany reverse-engineered it. They built the Panzerschreck, essentially a bazooka on steroids. Larger warhead, more penetration. America had given Germany the blueprint for a better anti-tank weapon. The Army fixed the bazooka. The improved M9 became genuinely effective. But this chapter of the story rarely makes it into the celebration. It's a reminder that even the most revolutionary weapons of this war had rough, messy, sometimes dangerous introductions. The bazooka earns its legend, but it earned it slowly. Weapon 7, the M1911 pistol, a legend that outlived its usefulness. Every serious conversation about the M1911 eventually runs into the same wall. The people who love it most are frequently not the ones who depended on it in combat. John Browning's 1911 design is, by any objective mechanical standard, a masterpiece. The 45 ACP round it fires is powerful. The single-action trigger is crisp. It has been continuously used by American forces from 1911 to today in various forms. But in World War II, a pistol was a backup weapon, a last resort. Officers carried them because they needed both hands free to command. Medics carried them for protection. The honest reality is this: for the vast majority of soldiers who carried an M1911 in World War II, they never fired it in anger. And for the minority who did, it meant something had already gone very wrong. The M1911 is legendary in American gun culture. In World War II, as a battlefield weapon, it was a psychological comfort as much as a tactical tool. There's no shame in that. Knowing you have a last resort matters. But let's be precise about what we're celebrating. Weapon 8, the Browning automatic rifle, the squad's spine. If you want to understand how an American infantry squad functioned in World War II, really understand it, you start with the bare man. Every 12-man squad had one soldier whose entire job was built around the Browning automatic rifle. He was the firepower anchor. The squad maneuvered around him. He laid down suppressive fire. He held ground while others moved. Here's what makes the BR genuinely fascinating. It was neither a true automatic rifle nor a true light machine gun. It was something in between, and that in-between space was exactly what American squad tactics needed. German squads were built around their MG-42 machine gun. Fast, devastating, terrifying. But it required a crew, it required a tripod and a belt feed. It needed to be set up. The barman needed nothing but himself. He moved with the squad. He brought machine gun adjacent firepower to positions no crew-served weapon could reach. Veterans of the European theater frequently cited the BAR as the weapon they were most relieved to have nearby when things went bad. Not the glamorous answer, but the true one. Here's the thing about ranking weapons. The men who carried these weren't historians. They weren't collectors. They weren't watching YouTube at 11 p.m. trying to decide which rifle had the best spec sheet. They were 19, 22, and 27 years old. They were cold. They were tired. Some of them were terrified. And they formed opinions about their weapons the only way that actually counts: under fire. What history gave them as legendary? They sometimes found heavy, unreliable, or impractical. What history overlooked? They sometimes clung to like a lifeline. The real lesson of ranking American World War II weapons isn't about the weapons at all. It's about the gap between how wars are remembered and how they are actually fought. Between the museum piece in the glass case and the mud-covered tool that got a 22-year-old home to his family. Those are different things. They deserve to be talked about differently. And that's exactly what we did today. If this video gave you something you didn't already know, even one thing, that's exactly what it was built to do. Hit like and subscribe for more such content in future. Until then, stay curious.